All right. Hello, everyone. The title of tonight's episode is Visible Others and Invisible Selves. And so, I understand that it took me 2 minutes to start the title. But I want to get into this notion of how, of course, a lot of my talks center around how human beings are acknowledging existence. So, in some sense, how something that exists is acknowledging the sense of other, of existence. You see, I take it, I kind of draw our history in this way, where it was as if there was a sort of biological, there was first the movement of matter in space. Let's give the world that sort of origin, where there was just stuff moving around. And after billions of years, the stuff became complex enough to be separate. So what that means is nature separated from itself in the form of man. And not just in the form of man, in the form of the creature. So the creature came into reality, and the creature was a kind of production of the cosmos. The creature was defined by its ability to physically be separate from the world, and eventually, once the subjective evolution, in some sense, took place, to be separate as a thought in the world. So first, our bodies, after billions of years, they began acknowledging a separation. First, we were the world. We were the world growing into, kind of growing into place, and then we became creatures that were separate, and so it became self and other. And that's what I'm trying to get to here. That there is a sense of self which is, in some sense, visible to you, and then there's a sense of other that is visible. But there's also a sense of others that is invisible to you, which is, as what I mean by that is, you don't have like other people's eyes. You cannot see through other people's eyes in some sense. You see, you have your eyes, you're seeing through. So in some sense, there is an invisible other and there's an invisible self. So the title you see here, trust me, I've played around with various dynamics of this. I've spoken about the visible self. I've spoken about the visible others. That a part of our responsibility has to maintain its visible existence. You have to live to be alive. But if you are alive and you don't live, you have forgotten why billions of evolution took place, billions of years of evolution took place. So I speak of something which they're not teaching in education or educational systems, and I was just like Game of Thrones, like shame, shame, shame to the educational system. Because they are filling the mind of the child with content, yet the child does not know what this content is for because they have not began living for life. There's only one way you live for life, and that is you live for life. And those two, that like I'm being poetic here, but what I mean is that you have to live for life. That which is alive has a sacredness beyond conceivable power. How you acknowledge your existence suggests the existence that's accessible to you, simply. When I was younger, I had fear. Later on, years later, I like just grew past those fears. And I kind of looked back and I'm like, wow, sometimes we put boxes over our heads and feel the world is a lonely place. And those boxes tend to, the worst kind of boxes that are really hard to break are ideological boxes. Like, if you saw a cardboard box, probably with one strong kick, like you could flatten it. But you cannot flatten certain ideological boxes because your identity requires that room of acknowledgement. I once asked myself very mystically, why are my memories? Why do I have memories? And it wasn't out of a search for grace or I was trying to be disgraceful. It was one of those things where I was wondering. I was wondering why senses of self, like this physical body, is like a singular point, and all my memories and various memories that I have access to in this moment are like lines that are going through the same point. Each line holds within itself a way I was in this life. Here's the thing. What some people deny as the supernatural, it's just nature when you pay super attention to it. It has to do with attention. Our attention, believe it or not, we're only taught that it moves in accordance to our physical body. But Mr. Within is here to say, the educational system failed that test. What I mean, what I mean is, we have nowhere else to go as a species after we have reached the pinnacle of knowledge to enter the unknown. It's something that happens. It's like the cool thing of life. We think our lives are just this physical existence. No, our lives is where the momentum of the journey is going or how it's being. You see, it's like whenever you physically, when your external reality gets limited, your subjective reality, once your objective reality gets limited, your subjective reality wants to assure itself freedom. The way your mind is standing right now, you may think you're the most loveliest, saintly person, but deep down, your mind is like, I need somewhere to be that is real to me. What I mean is that you're not just wearing clothing, you're also wearing ideological reality. And in various moments, it shifts. In the mystical tradition, they had a very incredible approach because they realized, okay, you realize in the known, what is the known data? They sought the unknown data. Any human being who authentically is like comes to the unknown is very different than those kind of running after it with mouths watering. I kind of became sad at some point when I looked at the New Age community. I became sad because I saw that fantasy was an escapism from the traditional program, but it was escape into a fantasy. I realized the issue is more severe, that our species has to I wanted to say re-wander, but I don't believe the dictionary acknowledges that word. Yeah. We have to rediscover the nature of how phenomena is being, and we have to stop resisting inner realities And we have to stand seriously and firmly among external realities. You see, it is, you have to know in this life, as Bruce Lee said, like Bruce Lee in an interview, some dude's asking him, he's like, spitting wisdom, and what he says is, he says, be like water, my friend. He says something like that. And the interviewer is like wondering, okay, what do you mean? And so he says, water can crash. The element of water can literally be like a broken dam crashing through the past structures. Or the element of water can be very gentle. It can be that thin stream, like when you were walking in nature that one time you saw, like it moves gently. It can navigate. That is the pretty much the purpose of consciousness. It is to move. It is to navigate. But it navigates itself based on external survival conditions rather than inner realization conditions. So you see, right now as I'm speaking, it's like when I wondered, it's like the way life is designed is my attention is meant to be directed outwards, as if even though my eyes are open and light is entering them, my attention is leaving. It's like as light enters, my attention leaves out my eyes. And that attention is more like the space. So when you really become wondrous about the metaphysical, you're being drawn towards space. This is why emptiness, or the acknowledgement, or any awareness or understanding of emptiness, is held in very high regard in Buddhist and yogic tradition. But yoga is a bit different than in regards to Buddhism, because it depends on the antiquity of the roots of the ideology. Some ideas on this planet, they are ancient. Some ideas, they are not ancient. Some ideas are ancient, but because they were forgotten and are rediscovered, they seem new. It's like a man who had gone into heaven, like already, like there was no fear anymore. A man who went to heaven. Ask God, hey God, what's the point of making heaven? Why do we have to go somewhere after we die? Why is the reality destination oriented? And God kind of looks at that guy in heaven and he's like, you're talking too much, buddy. I'm joking, I'm joking. An answer may come to this question of why there should be structure once we have an awareness of the temporality of the structure, as if like the person's like, I'm going to die anyways, what's the point of thinking of what comes after life? While I'm alive, let me just live this life. And that's, believe it or not, that's an honorable mindset. I am in no way advocating that in some sense the whole world should suddenly become yogis. That is meaningless, because the whole point of yoga is the ultimate union. You already are. Your first step was your final step, and that is the true path of enlightenment. But for many, it kind of stretches out into fantasies, because it's very easy to make the body still, but it is not easy to make the mind still, because the mind will not rest until the free will feels like God to itself. It's strange. It's in the design. This might be a strange sentence, but I feel it needs to be shared. Silence asked the noise. The spirit of silence asked the spirit of the noise. And silence said to the noise, why are you making noise? Why can't you just accept where things come from? And the noise says, Because if we began at silence, why should we stay silent? What defines the true nature of the biological survival, urge to survive of the species, is an advancement where novelty is the programmer. You get defined not by your past. You don't get just defined by your views on the future, which are still the past. You realize the only way to enter the future is to accept the present moment. What I mean is that the ultimate acceptance is the revelation that you have already accepted. They asked this yogi by the name of Swami Krishnananda. They said, Swami Krishnananda, what is religion? And he looked back and he said, religion is God remembering himself. What that means is man's problems could never be understood by man. We are a child in the cradle of the cosmos. The thing is, people are trying to manage reality, but they don't realize a lot of life and your navigation through it has to do with reality management. What does that mean? That means there's many moments that will appear to you as real, and there will be many moments that appear to you as false. What is the proper response? The response is an honor for how the unknown is becoming known. I feel that's the healthiest mindset for the species. We are afraid by the unknown. We fear extinction, so we have already given up. Just imagine, I understand a lot of secular societies, they advocate evidence based on material proof. I totally understand that and I totally respect it. Some things you gotta see before you can, in some sense, accept. But it is said, not in just Zen koans and ancient scripts and scriptures and whatnot. That the drop that fears evaporation is fearing it because it does not see the ocean. This is what will happen to the human personality. There will come a phase of evolution. I say it very, I find it's a very elegant way to say it. The winds of evolution will move forth. I am just getting a temporary stage here. I'm giving these talks. These talks for me, this lifetime for me, the biggest revelation is that it is not my totality. You see, I remember when I was young, I heard this article that said we human beings use 10 to 12% of our brain, and it tends to be more in the frontal lobe region. However, if right now our views are based on 10% of our brain activity, then we have no clue what we are, because if we had 100% brain activity, what would we see then? You see, the external world is structure oriented. The inner reality is not structure oriented. It is attention oriented. And this is why any person who understands how to wield their attention will walk into this world as if they are walking in the next. The transition of individual, objective consciousness into collective subjective unconscious movement. What I'm saying is this is the chaos, this is the apocalypse of the educational system. Right now, we think language is our greatest technology. This is why educational systems have a high price. This is why status is claimed by knowledge. But I feel that's shallow. And this doesn't mean that I feel I don't know things in this life. It just feels that what we don't know as a species is way more than what we know. And so if we get too convinced by what we know, we have in some sense found just another cave to go hide in. The species must transcend its technologies. And the detachment from nature had a crucial thing to this. Check this out. Imagine if the technological revolution had never occurred. The industrial revolution had never occurred. The technological age had not been set into motion. Imagine human beings, rather than starting to build skyscrapers, their relationship experientially with nature changed. That means there are certain, you can say playfully, I'm saying this, you can, if it's too much for you, acknowledge it as a thought experiment. But I have playfully considered that if technology was not here, the biological body would have to evolve. It would have to evolve in accordance to nature. What that means is we would understand, it's like, how we say there's an opportunity cost? There's an opportunity cost in how human beings evolve based on where their attention goes. And I'm telling you, 2019, it's still good. I've kind of entered this world early, but there has been times where I've found strange tears on my face when I have wondered about 700 years in the future. When I have wondered what world will the children of future generations of the children of humanity open their eyes in? What world are we leaving behind? And you can tell by the trash of a nation, in some sense, their care of the nation. This is why, for me, an evolved society cares for its environment. It doesn't want to just blindly break things and call it progress. Any person can get a hammer and break something, but only few people can truly pick up a hammer and build something. And so the world is multidimensional because there has been multiple beings who have put an effort on the surface of this planet. This effort, in one way, it has translated, you can say, like, there's a kind of philosophy on language, that language is an extension. It's like a limb. It's just like how, for example, like, I don't know, we grew 5 fingers in the evolutionary scene. It's as if first, maybe there wasn't 5 fingers, then through billions of years of evolution and adaptation, in some sense, there came some sort of fingering structure. The ape could hold a banana after a billion years. After 4 billion years, the ape could finally hold a banana. That was progress of some kind. These Once the person's body began to move, the moment of being chose to evolve in a subjective dimension. Do you know what the subconscious mind is? Some people feel imagination is in the territory of the subconscious mind. You're aware of it, but you don't really see it. As if right now I can imagine in front of me there's millions of people listening. But at the same time, those millions of people are not physically here. So you see, when you orient life based on only physical matter, you, in some sense, have already assumed a sort of devaluing of subtler data, which you can say is the imaginatory movement. You see, the reason is, if when you ask someone, hey man, imagine some, like, how can I tell you, like, I've spoken to some people, they feel they're not creative, and I was like, wow, it's as if the world is creative, but this creature in the world doesn't think they're creative. Trust me, it's all about various values that experience solidifies as memories. You see, there was a poet named Rumi. He said, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, out beyond these ideas, there is a place. And then he says, I will meet you there, as if all creatures are going that direction. And then he says, I will meet you there. And then he says, and when the soul sits on that grass, the world is too full to talk about. What that means is the moment is at a state of being. You're literally vibrating at a state. Your attention is oscillating between existence and non-existence at such a fast pace where you become non-conceptual being. When the psychology dismantles itself, it does it through a parachute. What that means is, I find that the species hasn't cared enough for the mental constitution of its existence. This is why right now it's an interesting time. I feel any person who wonders about this will be doing the work of the pioneers, similar work as the pioneers, because it's as if every era, every generation brings with it a new shift. It's kind of strange in this life when you want to control something, just to say it very directly, like, when you want to control something, it doesn't want to be controlled, simply because you subconsciously know it is unnatural what you're doing. Any human being who does something that to themselves feels unnatural, it will have a consequence on your character. And this is why you feel karma. Oh my god, karma. For me, life is very brilliant. It starts off from a designer's view. That means when I have memories before I learned language, I was just watching life as like a designer in a architectural gallery or something. I'm like, okay, I'm seeing design, but interestingly, the language wasn't there. This is why I personally know every human being, underneath your beliefs of who you are, there's an emotional intelligence functioning. This emotional intelligence was first nurtured. That means you cannot distinguish and discriminate unless you have different emotions. That means a person who wants to be happy all the time is like a psychopath. And you'll be like, what do you mean, Mr. Within? Happiness is the ultimate. You gotta be happy, man. I'll be like, yeah, I get it. We gotta be happy. But just to entrap oneself or encage oneself in an ideological constitution that is only valid in the inner reality and ignoring the world, that is why our civilization is not advanced. because we're ignoring the world by being more drawn in by our inner realities. Our inner realities have only value for ourselves. And trust me, yourself at its core is invisible too. It's as if like a person being selfish is like a person who wants emptiness to hold an illusion a bit longer. Because think about it. Let's assume we had heard no such idea as mind or body, mind or soul. Imagine these are vague notions. That means these words didn't exist in the dictionary. The fact that they exist in a dictionary means there's a reality to them. Of course, a linguistic reality. The this is the fascinating thing about the dictionary, that I feel it should be divided like this, but it's not. The dictionary should be divided about words that point to visible reality and words to known reality, and words that point to unknown realities. For example, love is a word that points to an unknown reality. You know, it's like they went and asked, like here, they went and asked joy specifically. They went and asked the blacksmith, what is joy? And he's like, when that moment when I'm making the greatest sword and I hit the hammer and the final blow makes the perfect sword. They went and asked the baker, hey man, what's the greatest moment of your life? Like, well, not sorry, no, what's the greatest moment of life? It's like, what is joy? And then the guy's like, joy is that smell of that next level bread I have baked in the morning or something, you know? And you see in each profession, in each moment of life that is being identified, that's identifying to its environment and its context, it gets defined by it. Do you see? Man asked God, God, where are you? And a voice came, and the voice came, and the voice said, I'm here. And then the man looked outside, and he saw the voice was not coming from anything outside. The voice was coming from within. And God in that moment is saying to man, I have been there behind your eyes before you were born. This is why the whole notion of religion, if you go see, I mean, on some level, I do understand the dogmatic limits to any idea. It's not just religion, and any idea held too long will have a sort of weight to it. But there was this notion that we have to know the source of what is being here. Now, somebody paints you a religious story, you like it, sure, go there. Somebody points you a secular story or a scientific story, sure, you like it, go. But that will to wonder about the unknown, that is something that must be cultivated. It must be cherished. There's this yogi by the name of Kabir. Kabir looks at one of his students and shouts. He shouts at the student. And so he says, student, he was this yogi like back in the day. He says, student. And the student silently, with pure attention, looks at Kabir. "Student, tell me what is God?" And he shouts. And in that moment, the student gasps and says, "It is the breath inside the breath. It is the presence of the personality. It is the movement of the free will in the stillness of a meaningless formation." For me, I realize there. It's as if I realize like the more important than trying to physically change things. We gotta wonder about the inner realities of life, and you have to work with this in the way where, sure, you can have, like, let's say there is your birth certificate and there is like your resume and and there is like your diary or whatever, there are like there is an idea of you, a story to you, like the sense of you, like when you speak to people, that story of you is what is in the mask of the free will in that moment. But think of the way that life can be, where it transcends the static existence of concepts and subjectivity, and moves towards the kind of dynamic uh, vision of a changing world. We must care. We must care for what is unseen, because if we don't, we'll be lost in a loop. So you can say the urge of evolution was to escape a loop, a programmed loop of a sort of reliance on a condition that is actually a mirror. It's as if the guy went to the mirror and shouted, it's like, "Mirror, show yourself." And the mirror's like, "Hey man," and the guy looked and he only saw himself. He didn't see the mirror. You see? It's the self-reflective nature of thought. In Japanese culture, they had this sort of belief system in Shintoism. In Shinto, it was a kind of strange viewpoint they had. Their viewpoint was like traditional spirituality. Okay, you're one transmigrating soul going up the, hierarchy towards the ultimate or something, right? But in Shinto, it was strange because it was as if they said the body is a vessel and various souls come through it. As if your body is like, how can I tell you, is like a hotel for your thoughts. What I mean by that is that they had this notion that many souls, like as if like objects are just like they're the floor of another dimension where other forms of intelligence are moving through. You know, for example, in the New Age community, you find certain people who acknowledge the idea of channeling. Channeling is this notion where the person thinks like something else is speaking to them, and and it's definitely marketed well. That idea, it's marketed victoriously, but the issue is that the inner realities have no owner. Thoughts come and go. The attributelessness of the presence of your attention immediately calls you to the arms of your true self. It's a call to arms, but of a sort of insightful approach where you're wondering what is in your sight, or any information your data processing biological mechanism engages. It's as if you wonder, how is the world standing in my eyes? And for a long time, I realized the easiest thing is to let go. Have you noticed this, guys? Letting go is actually super easy. Anytime anybody, even that person, might believe it's not easy, but the moment they do, they're going to realize how easy it was. And so sometimes we don't just let go of physical stuff. Like, if somebody handed you an apple, you drop it, And let's say the apple dropped from your hand and Isaac Newton was there and you started clapping. It's like, yes, that's gravity. You know? But imagine the apple fell by you consciously letting go. Now, similarly, there occurs certain moments in existence, and I believe it's going to happen for the species, for some earlier, for some later. But what the notion is that the being is letting go of ideology, but then with what hands are you letting go of an idea? And you realize the inner reality, interestingly, because it is non-dual, the true intuitive, like your intuition is kind of like the tip of an iceberg of your true presence. Your true presence is so beyond conception that I'm telling you, this human, this like plane of existence, this earth we see, this earth is it's a bunker. It's a bunker for the attention that has not found itself yet. You see, it's like this world is an excuse for the ignorance of a superiority. This superiority is not God. Because it is beyond the language threshold. Beyond the language threshold is like language is a technology, it has its limits. Even though we use language to create the words such as eternity or infinity, ideas of a limitless, view, we see that it's language does have limits, you know. And it's very incredible when you figure it out because then at some point you realize you can't do anything. As if you're in a battlefield, but you see you're holding a spoon and you're like, okay, this is not going to help me. And you just let it go. You let go of what doesn't work to then see what can work. And then once you have seen what can work, you must trust to try. And once you trust to try, the feedback of your own experience aligns you to the rhythms of this universal sector. When it aligns you to the rhythms of the universal sector, you graduate from being a creature of thought into being the seer of thought. You live your days on this planet. Of course, I'm painting a kind of too simplistic of a picture here, but uh, but what I'm saying is that I think I figured out where everything is going. And I thought it was in front of it was in external oriented. And then I thought it was inner oriented. Then I discovered the witness that watches that which is within and without. You are an ultimate watcher. Behind your eyes, you cannot name the universe. You cannot name the universe that is looking through. Because we claim ownership to our eyes due to the conceptuality of our kind of individual consciousness. It's like we're individuals and we're like, yeah, this is how the world is, yeah. But this is why Socrates, one of the most profound, like, let me tell you how profound Socrates was. We're speaking about him even today, but he was from ancient Greek times. And Socrates, he says the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. Jon Snow. But seriously, um, when I heard that sentence, you know nothing, I realized you know no thing. You know that which is not a thing. The visible self, the invisible self within the visible other. Let me tell you what I think will happen. I feel we will, as a species, feel we have set in motion certain patterns of ideological movement on this earth that life can no longer be the same. It's as if when I go on the street, like, I see giants walking, giants, But these giants are not physical, they are ideologies that masses of people are just following. And I look at myself and I'm like, how hilarious, you know? We're all trying to be a part of something rather than realizing we're already a part of the world. Because it's like for me, to be playful in the chaotic conditions of a changing world is like uh, it's as if you're walking in earth like you're in heaven. You know, they say it's bad to be a fool, but many people know that fools have more fun because they don't get defined by ideological values. They're just too foolish. They're too foolish to be put a blindfold on. Anyways, guys, I feel I might give a part two to this. And I don't know if the chat is active or not. But anyways, YouTube has to find a more efficient way to kind of bridge inner realities. Anyways, um, so care for your sense of, once you really care for yourself, your true self, you'll realize your true self, the idea of it is codependent with the idea of the other. So you can't just live for yourself, unfortunately. You have to live for the world, which is the opportunity of your greatest self, which is to come. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And something beautiful about existential acknowledgement, as Da Vinci said, simplicity is the most ultimate sophistication. You will reach the peak of complex evolution just to realize you couldn't acknowledge the simple. The simple is, you realize some of the most complex people, they will learn from simple moments of life because those simple moments will devalue, you know, the conceptual firmness of their view. Because life is, it's kind of like every day is a gift. I'm not joking. Every day you open your eyes as if a new existence has been given access. It's like somebody told this kid, "Don't play video games, kid." And then the mystic, in some sense, came. You know, the guru came to the disciple, and he's like, "Don't play, don't play lifetime games. You know, you're kind of an ocean doesn't need to act like a drop." Much blessings and namaste. After the completion of the evolutionary return to nature, humanity will breathe as one moment that could never perish, that could never die. We have to re-evoke a new vision. Yet this vision must be inspired out of our own natural abidance with how existence appears to us. You must first climb out of the world you see. That means right now I'm talking to you, for example, this current waking moment. I'm seeing a world and I'm speaking, and you're seeing a world and you're hearing what I'm saying, for example. But what me and you are concluding out of anything is our world. Like what I'm saying is that you have to step beyond your own eyes to see beyond yourself. But you step beyond your own eyes by realizing where sensory data is going. And sensory data seems to be going to an like a spontaneous conscious moment. Eternity cannot be defined. because it is too simple and too instantaneous to have a definition. Much blessings and all.